My dear friend, before your mind tries to organize these words or place them into a category that feels familiar, allow yourself to settle into the truth that moments of real spiritual significance rarely announce themselves with volume or spectacle, because heaven does not rely on noise to establish authority, and the most decisive shifts in a human life often occur quietly, without witnesses, without applause, without even immediate relief. And yet those moments carry more weight than years of visible effort, because they alter direction rather than appearance. And you have already lived through one of those moments, even if at the time it felt ordinary, uncomfortable, or even costly, because it did not look like winning, it did not feel like progress, and it certainly did not come with validation. It looked like restraint when reaction would have been easier. It looked like you choosing stillness when old patterns demanded chaos. It looked like you refusing to repeat a familiar response, even though that response had once protected you. And in the unseen realm, that choice was not registered as growth or self-control, but as authority being formed. Because heaven does not measure significance the way people do. Heaven measures alignment, and alignment is not proven when conditions are supportive, but when they are tempting. When your nervous system is activated, when your history is loud, and you still choose differently. And that is why the moment you paused instead of reacting, the moment you refused to carry forward what once defined you, the moment you decided internally that something ends here, even though nothing around you changed yet, it landed like a ruling rather than an emotion, like a decision rather than a hope. Because spiritual law responds to inner agreement, and you quietly withdrew your consent from a cycle that had been feeding on your participation for years, maybe generations. And you did not do it with a speech or a dramatic exit. You did it with a shift inside your posture, a refusal to keep negotiating with what drains you, a refusal to keep proving your worth through endurance. And when that happened, the system that had been delaying you lost leverage. Because repetition only survives when someone keeps agreeing to it. And the moment you stop agreeing, the pattern has no legal ground to stand on anymore, even if it still tries to echo for a while. And that is why it may have felt strange afterward, like something loosened, but did not immediately disappear. Because authority does not always remove things instantly. Sometimes it simply removes their right to stay, and from that point on, they begin collapsing on their own. And this is where I need you to understand something very clearly. God is not waiting to see how things turn out in your life. He is not hoping for improvement. He is not negotiating with outcomes. When God decides that a season has fulfilled its purpose, it does not require explanation or consensus. It requires alignment. And you already provided that alignment when you chose integrity over impulse, peace over familiarity, truth over comfort. And that is why what is happening now feels different from previous turning points. Because this is not about effort. It is about clearance, like an internal authorization that changes how situations are allowed to interact with you. And this is what people misunderstand when they hear that God makes an exception. They assume it means favoritism or lowered standards. But in reality, it means precision. Because exceptions are not given to those who demand them. They are granted to those who become trustworthy with what comes next. And trustworthiness is not proven in abundance. It is proven in restraint, in how you carry yourself when you could have become bitter, but didn't. When you could have hardened, but stayed honest. When you could have weaponized your pain, but chose not to. And heaven watches those moments closely, because power does not corrupt everyone, but it does reveal what was already present. And you showed in private that relief would not make you reckless, That influence would not make you cruel. That being seen would not make you arrogant. And that is why certain doors are beginning to open without force. Why certain dynamics are no longer working against you the way they used to. Why some people suddenly cannot access you the way they once did. Because authority has shifted, and authority does not announce itself. It simply changes what is permitted, and you may notice that your tolerance for certain behaviors has disappeared without effort. Not because you became cold, but because your spirit no longer negotiates with what it has outgrown. And this is where many people misinterpret favor. They think it always feels exciting or rewarding, but often favor feels like clarity, like an inability to pretend, like a quiet internal no that does not require justification. And that is not regression, that is graduation, because you are no longer auditioning for roles that kept you small. And the truth is, you did more than heal. You dismantled an agreement that had been shaping your emotional reality for a long time. An agreement that said you must overgive to be loved. That said, silence equals safety. That said, endurance equals worth. And when you withdrew from that agreement internally, the entire structure that depended on it began losing power. And heaven registered that withdrawal not as self-help or maturity, but as authority forming in a human life. The kind of authority that disrupts systems without confrontation, because systems starve when you stop feeding them. And this is why the shift you're entering does not require you to fight harder, explain more, or prove anything. It requires composure, because composure is evidence that fear no longer has control over your decisions. And from here forward, you may notice that outcomes no longer follow the old logic you lived under. Not because life becomes effortless, but because it becomes cleaner, less wasted energy, fewer emotional negotiations, fewer detours designed to keep you busy instead of fulfilled. And that simplicity is not reduction, it is refinement. Because complexity often hides avoidance, and clarity exposes truth. And you have become someone who can live with truth without self-betrayal. And that is why God is shifting the system around you now. Not because you asked louder, but because you became safe to bless. Safe in your motives, safe in your reactions, safe in your stewardship of peace. And heaven builds futures on people who can hold power without losing themselves. And that is who you proved yourself to be when no one was watching. When there was no reward for choosing right. When you held the line simply because it was right. And that is why this moment matters. Because exceptions are not emotional events. They are structural changes. And the structure of your life is being reorganized around who you have become, not who you used to be. So move forward without rushing, without over-explaining, without looking back for validation. Because what is shifted does not need to be defended. It will reveal itself through outcomes, through access, through peace, through alignment, and through the quiet knowing that something that once controlled you no longer does. And that knowing is the mark of authority settling into place. And as this authority continues to settle into your life, you may notice that the noise around you does not immediately stop, because patterns often protest before they dissolve, and old systems do not surrender quietly when they realize they no longer have permission. But here is the difference now. The noise no longer decides your direction, because you are no longer reacting from survival. You are responding from alignment. And alignment creates gravity. It pulls the right things toward you and pushes the wrong things away without force. And this is where many people become confused, because they expect breakthrough to feel like acceleration. But often it feels like stabilization first. Like your inner world becoming calm enough to recognize what is actually meant for you. And that calm is not emptiness. It is readiness. Because chaos cannot steward clarity. And God does not release the next chapter into a nervous system that is still addicted to urgency. So some of what you experienced recently, the slowing down, the detachment, the loss of appetite for drama, the inability to engage in conversations that once consumed you, was not disinterest. It was recalibration, like a compass correcting itself before pointing true north. And this recalibration is why certain invitations no longer excite you, why certain opportunities feel hollow even if they look impressive, because alignment sharpens discernment, and discernment is not judgment. It is recognition. The recognition that not everything that wants you deserves you, and that understanding alone changes the quality of your future, because time is no longer spent maintaining what cannot grow with you. And this is where the exception begins to manifest in tangible ways, not always dramatic, but undeniable. Like being listened to without raising your voice, like your boundaries being respected without explanation, like doors opening that do not require you to abandon your values to enter. And this is important, because God does not reward self-betrayal with blessing. He removes the need for it, and that is what clearance looks like. The removal of situations where compromise was once required to survive. And you may find yourself surprised by how quickly certain dynamics resolve now, not because people suddenly became better, but because your internal authority no longer negotiates with confusion. And confusion cannot exist where clarity is present. And clarity is a byproduct of truth. And truth is what you chose when you decided to stop pretending that endurance was the same as purpose. And this is where generational weight begins to lift, because patterns are often inherited not by instruction, but by imitation. And when you choose a different way without announcing it, without condemning anyone else, without trying to prove superiority, you break the transmission. And heaven recognizes that as leadership. Not leadership over people, but leadership over patterns. And that is far rarer, because it requires self-awareness instead of control, and responsibility instead of blame. And this is why the shift you are experiencing feels internal before it becomes external, because authority must be embodied before it is expressed, and embodiment takes time. Not because God delays, but because you are integrating a new identity, one that does not need to fight for space, one that does not collapse under pressure, one that does not disappear when challenged. And integration often feels quiet, almost anticlimactic. But it is during this quiet that the future is actually being secured, because stability is the foundation of expansion. And expansion without stability becomes destruction. And God is not interested in giving you something that would cost you yourself. And that is why the exception you are living under now feels protective, like certain doors are closed without effort, like certain people drift without confrontation, like certain habits lose their appeal without discipline. Because when alignment is real, discipline becomes unnecessary. And this is the mark of maturation, not force, but coherence, where your actions, values, and nervous system are finally speaking the same language. And from this place, your choices become clean, not perfect. Clean, meaning they do not require justification, defense, or recovery afterward. And clean choices compound. They build momentum without burnout. And this is how life begins to feel lighter, without becoming shallow. Because depth no longer equals heaviness. Depth becomes grounding, and grounding allows you to move forward without fragmentation. And this is where influence begins to form naturally, because people feel safety around those who are not internally divided. And safety is magnetic, and magnetism does not need to perform. It attracts by being, and you are becoming someone whose presence carries coherence. And coherence changes environments, not by domination, but by example. And this is why some people will feel unsettled around you now, not because you did anything wrong, but because your clarity exposes their avoidance, and that is not your responsibility to manage, because alignment does not require approval. And approval seeking is one of the patterns you already released, and that release created space. Space for peace, space for precision, space for purpose that is not loud but lasting. And from this space, your next steps will feel obvious rather than forced, simple rather than chaotic, intentional rather than reactive. And this is how you will know the exception is real, because life stops feeling like a constant negotiation and starts feeling like a collaboration between who you are becoming and what is being prepared for you. And that collaboration is not rushed, because what is built to last does not need urgency to survive. It needs integrity. And integrity is what you proved when you chose differently without witnesses. And that proof did not expire. It became a foundation. And foundations do not announce themselves. They simply hold everything that comes next. And you are standing on one now, even if you cannot fully see what it will support yet. And that is okay, because trust is not knowing the details. Trust is knowing who you are becoming, and you have become someone who can be trusted with more, not more noise, more responsibility, more clarity, more impact without collapse. And heaven responds to that kind of readiness, not with spectacle, but with access. Access to rooms you once circled without entry. Access to conversations that matter. Access to versions of yourself that were waiting for safety to emerge. And that safety is internal, not circumstantial. And because it is internal, it cannot be taken from you. And this is the final shift. The realization that what you were seeking externally has been established internally. And from here, everything aligns differently, because you are no longer trying to arrive. You are moving from arrival, and that changes the way you walk forward. Steady, composed, awake, aware, without the need to prove that anything happened, because the evidence will be your peace, your clarity, your restraint, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing a cycle ended because you decided it would.